Yes, Pauline, welcome.
Thank you. So for those who have not been very familiar with Africa Geoportal, so this is an initiative that was started as part of a global effort by esri to make sure that we provide access to content and tools and capacity development abilities to users across Africa, because we notice that this is a growing continent. This is a continent that keeps on getting more and more accessible. So we just found it necessary to make available these capabilities to people across Africa or to people interested in Africa. So as just indicated here by our founder, our main aim was to help people be able to discover, explore, and understand all kinds of data that have been made available over time. So this means that data coming from esri collaboration with other organizations, coming from development partners, and coming from initiatives such as Digital Earth Africa. We were trying to empower users to be able to have access to this data and make use of it. So the main drive behind this was actually driven by identifying the challenges that have been across Africa over time, and also identifying the opportunities that are there. So just looking at what are some of the things that are commonplace in some of the countries, not all of them, some of the countries in Africa, and looking at what opportunities do we have also on the other end in terms of trying to put together the knowledge we have, the capabilities we have, the increased access to internet, as well as increased access to technology over time. How can we take advantage of these opportunities to try and address the challenges that were there? So that led to the birth of Africa Geoportal, and from that point, we've been able to address some of these challenges, or to empower different users or different communities across Africa. So by communities, we mean that there are user communities in the sense of data science groups or GIS groups or sector groups and so on that can take advantage of our technology. So we just took this chance to empower them. So with the creation of Africa Geoportal, we aimed to achieve some key things. And by achieving these things, we believed that we were also just playing a role in a way for many of the individuals across Africa to be able to have access to our tools, which allow users to be able to bring in content from different sources, be it their own data as well as data from various sources, be able to visualize this information, do analysis on it if required, then finally share it out as results that can be used by different people across platforms. So with this, we've been able to remove barriers that might have previously been there in terms of being able to access geospatial technology, data, and learning resources, because through Africa Geoportal and the relationships we have with other entities across Africa, we've done our best to ensure that users have access to data, have access to the tools that come with the data, as well as be able to use learning resources to support it or to be able to interact with the data. In addition to that, we've enabled a sustainable portal of portals, whereby I think one of the commonplace challenges, again, that we have seen with individuals across the continent is that whenever people are searching for data, they try to look for this information from different locations. So there are many portals that are available that provide data. And what we did with Africa Geoportal is we provided a platform whereby we can have data from different entities or different organizations, development partners, initiatives, and so on, who can leverage the technology or the platform that we have to just enhance access to data. So this has made it easier for people to go to one location, be able to visualize data and make use of it. And finally, also just looking at our specific users across Africa. So as a company or as a technology company at esri, we have quite some significant usage of our technology across the continent. And again, we're looking at the rest of Africa and trying to enable them. We also thought that it also be good for our customers to also be able to have access to this information. So we have, again, worked with our partners across Africa to just enable our own users to be able to make use of some of the resources that have been mentioned. So these capabilities that come with Africa Geoportal are the ability to make use of geospatial tools available there, make use of data from the Living Atlas. So the Living Atlas is our main resource for authoritative geospatial content for the world. So we have the Living Atlas for the world that has data available, again, based on different needs and so on. And then now beyond that, we've also gone ahead to scale this to the level of Africa and make this data available for African users. Other than that, for learning resources, we've been able to provide a number of lessons, and we'll have an exciting announcement at the end of this session, whereby we have again worked with various teams within esri to come up with learning resources that touch on addressing some of the common challenges across Africa, or being able to answer some key questions that might be useful across the continent. And obviously, we've had a number of users, again, being able to make use of our platform, and we provide also this platform as a way of them to share their success stories. So two main examples for this is we have a group in Nigeria known as the GeoHazards Initiative, where they've been able to use Africa Geoportal to enable their user community in Nigeria on disaster response. And yeah, they've been able to share their success stories based on that, or their impact stories. And we also have a group in Uganda known as Resilience Mappers, or MAP-RI, where they've been able to also use that technology to map informal settlement in Uganda. So just looking at the collaborator for this, as Africa Geoportal, again, this is a platform powered by esri. We've been able to come together with Digital Art Africa to create a partnership that would allow us to work together to solve common challenges or geospatial challenges in Africa. And we can access most of this information from that link provided there. And just looking at what Africa aims, that is to make sure that we have Earth observation data made available in a consumable format. Again, we have been able to work with Digital Art Africa to enhance access to this information and make it available to different users, again, through the Africa Geoportal platform. So just looking at that, it means that from Digital Art Africa, they had data on their data cube. They still have data on their data cube, and being able to use the underlying esri technology or the ArcGIS system to be able to bring in this information and have it available in formats that would make it easily accessible for use on desktop applications, whereby, again, a user would be able to interact with this data, change how it's rendered or visualized and so on, and use some of the different tools available just for advanced application or use of spatial data. We've also made it in a format, again, that could make it easy for people to have it on mobile applications. So through Africa Geoportal, we've made available some applications that would be relevant for field data collection. And again, in this format that we brought in the data to Africa Geoportal, we made it in a format that can be easily opened and used on mobile applications or for field data collection. And just looking at the applications also that support storytelling, that story maps, providing a narrative, or just being able to basically view information on a map, or being able to provide strategic information or tactical information, and so on, or just some form of situational awareness through dashboards and so on. So being able to make this data available for use in different formats. And for us to be able to get this data, definitely we worked with Digital Art Africa amongst other providers to be able to have this information being brought in from the data cubes available, which are available on currently where they've been set up are on Amazon, 3 buckets, and from there we've been able to pull in this information through a core component of ArcGIS known as ArcGIS image, and through that we've made this data available in different formats where users are able to use a multiple or different devices to be able to visualize this information and interact with it. So the outcome of this has been availability of the layers, as I've mentioned, as well as interactive tools that users can take advantage of to make use or to interact with this data. And these are ready-to-use tools that you can make use of. We've also made available, again, access to this information and every other application tied to it through Digital Art Africa Geoportal within Africa Geoportal. So from there, you can access some of this information and insights derived from it. And soon to be released is a lesson that our team had actually worked on in terms of trying to visualize this information and make use of it. So this lesson, it's actually something that we'll be launching very soon. That is on Friday, where for most users who are trying to understand how do they make use of these layers to also build the capacity in terms of interacting with imagery or interacting with Earth observation data and using ready-to-use application. So we've just provided a lesson that would guide users on how to go about it. And I think with that, I'll just go to the exploration bit to look at some of these elements that I've mentioned. So as a user, as you go to Africa Geoportal, which you can access on africageoportal.com, you can be able to see some of those things that I've mentioned there in terms of the data, the tools, and the learning resources that we've provided, as well as any other events that we are supporting, which could be any event proposed by the different user communities across Africa. So as you scroll down, you'll see some of the data that you've mentioned, as well as success stories or impact stories, like this one I just mentioned or highlighted, as well as the country portals that we have, whereby we worked with agencies for different countries to be able to have country-specific data available here, which you can explore later on. And then we also have specific portals made available for being able to relay also information from some of our partners across Africa. And again, if you have time, you can explore this later. So just looking at the case of Digital Art Africa, if you come to their site within Africa Geoportal, you get some information whereby we've tried to capture, where we worked together to capture the sentiments of the work that they're doing across Africa. And from there, you can interact with ready-to-use applications that are available for use. And then you can also interact with the layers that I mentioned. So just given the broad data set we have from Africa, we've been able to bring in some of the key data sets which we feel that would be, as at now, quite relevant and in high demand for users based on the interaction we've had with users through Africa Geoportal, but we're still working together to be able to bring in more of this data. So as a user, if you're able to click on any of these layers, for example, just looking at the Sentinel-2 annual GeoMarch, you get to come to the description of this layer, where again, you can access information on that particular data set, what it entails, where you can see for the GeoMarch, it's just a composite that was created, imagery that has been collected over time. And then they've just stacked one on top of the other to come up with this annual composite that can be used to get an understanding of that area despite any phenomena or beyond any season and so on. So it provides you with just a standard view of how a particular place would look like generally over time. So you can see that the number of bands available for use are just indicated there, which I believe the Africa team has been able to cover this over the previous sessions and so on. So this data within Africa Geoportal, as a user, you can use your account to be able to open this data set on a map and start interacting with it. So if I open this on a map, you can see it just displays for me the map itself, it displays the image itself. And from there, as a user, you can start interacting with it from the map viewer. So within the map viewer, you can see this is a time-enabled data set. So from there, one of the things as a user you'd be able to do is just configure the setting. And in my case, I would just like to say that I would like to look at how this place changes over time on an annual basis, because this geomat layer is just how this information has been captured over time, over a 1 year period over time. So as this keeps on switching to different time periods, just give it some time, it's going to pick up. You'll see there are some changes in terms of how the places, the different parts of Africa are displaying based on how the reflectance has been for those particular places over time. So you can get to see what kinds of variations have been experienced, again, between the different years and so on. Also, as a user, beyond that, you're able to change the image display. And this is based on different rendering options. So for rendering options, we mean that out of the 14 or so, 12 bands that were visible there, you can use different band combinations to be able to highlight particular aspects across Africa and so on. And based on those band combinations, you're able to see how there's a variation of vegetation, of soil moisture or moisture of our place and so on. Indices such as NDVI, water index, built-up index, band ratio, and so on. So you're able to use any of these renderers, which actually work on the fly. So it means that the data you have there, or whatever is on display here on the map, actually, it will take the rendering option on the fly that you set up for your particular imagery layer from the Africa that you actually have on display. So this makes it easier for you to interact with this information and so on from the map viewer and start making use of this data set. So just looking at a scenario we have, this is Lake Sulunga, which is a key water resource within Tanzania, just south of Dodoma. And this is actually one of the impact stories that the Africa was able to showcase, that having access to this Earth observation data over time actually allowed them to address given challenges across Tanzania and so on. So if I just had my the Africa layer again, imagery layer added over here, from this point, I'd be able to change the image display. So for this point, I've just opted to choose the water index to allow me to display this information based on that, or to display the layer based on that. And if we look at Bahi Swamp or Lake Sulunga, if I enable the time here, you'll see how this place is changing over time based on the water extent, just looking at the different years. So you can see if we look at 2017, the water extent really varied, and there was some extreme drought, I think, in 2019. But in 2020, you can see that the water extent had actually covered the whole area that would be considered as the lake or the swamp over time. So this just allows people to get a sense of how that particular place has changed, again, in terms of the things that someone would just want to be able to identify is how many households have been affected by the change of water extent within this place. So to do that, again, just some simple display, which is just identifying the places that have been affected and sharing out this information. As someone on Africa Geoportal or someone who's trying to address the situation, you can add data from various sources. So if once I click on add data, I can add my own data sets if I had information that pertains to that, or I could search for data on Living Atlas, African Living Atlas, or just generally on Access Online. So for me to be able to add this data, for example, one of the partners that I think we saw earlier on Africa Geoportal we have is Grade 3, and they've been able to map settlement extents all across Africa. And this information, if you click on one of the extents, you get to see what's the population within that particular extent and so on. So I could add my settlement extent, I could add my OpenStreetMap buildings for Africa, because this is also a layer that we've been able to work with OpenStreetMap community to bring this information for use across the broader ACTIA system as well as Africa Geoportal. So once I bring this information, I can use the tools we have on analysis, for analysis again, which are available on Africa Geoportal, that you can use to address some of these things. So for example, if I wanted to just have data specifically, or the settlement extent and the households specifically around Lake Sulunga or Baki Swamp, I'd be able to use the extract data tool over here to just specify my extent and get only the settlements and the households within this place. So that's just an example of how you can use, again, the tools at your disposal on Africa Geoportal to address this. So after that, I would basically have my specific extent. So if I moved to one of the villages here, just uncheck this, you'll see that I have my settlements there, or the villages that will be affected by the change of water extent over time, as well as households which may or may not be within the villages. You can see the little pink dots here are building footprints from OpenStreetMap that can give an indication of where people are living. And then for bigger extents, we can also see that change. And from just looking at this point, you can see places that are persistently being affected by flooding. As per the global standard, it means that if for 3 consecutive years, individuals are being affected by a certain situation, such as flooding and so on, then the government will be obligated to make a change. So that is coming to these places and identifying what should be the mitigation measures, such as relocating them and so on. And we can also see this for another village down here, whereby again, you can see the change in water extent over time. You can see that they're facing the risk of, if for another subsequent year, again, they would have, they will be closer to the water extent here, then probably they will need to be relocated. So this is just something basic that where we have used the African geomap layer, as well as just looking at how things have changed over time. We have added other data sets and so on, just to allow us to understand where are the different people or populations or villages or households, and what kind of effect do we expect over time. And this allows a government to be able to plan for any activity in terms of how do we mitigate what's going on, or how do we assist the population that's living around here and so on. So after such a thing, again, within Africa Geoportal, we have been able to access all these layers and create a map. We're able to just save this and share it out. So this can be shared as a web map that where if you share this link, then any user or any person or any stakeholder will be able to just come and view this information as it is, based on how you've configured or how you've changed the display of the layers. They'll be able to see this information, they'll be able to interact with the places. They can also just look around the water area and just see which other locations have been affected. Beyond that, it's possible to create an application which makes it, or which makes this information appear in a more polished manner, in the sense that, again, users can have a better user interface to interact with this information. So within Africa Geoportal, we have various templates that have been made or created to allow users to easily interact with the underlying information in our web map. So in this case, we have various templates that, again, you can take advantage of depending on the purpose or the audience of your map. And some of them are thematic, such as if you're looking at, you want to enable people to edit data. For example, if this information is going to be shared with the statistics officer for this particular area or district in Tanzania, you might want them to be able to put in information or comment, so you can use the collect or edit data template to have this application appear in a manner that would make it easier for them to update information on the map. We also have some such as allowing people to easily navigate to a place and so on, or just relay this information on a map. So we have options which would allow users to be able to just interact with the underlying information on the map, and also using some key map elements. So with that, we can just preview what the final result would look like if we choose this particular template. And just as it's loading, again, one of the things that would be possible for our user to do would be to just be able to click on any of these bookmarks and make use of them, as well as be able to access the legend and make use of it, and so on. So this provides an interactive format or an interactive interface for users to make use of. So that's just how you can take advantage of the layers that we made available on Africa Geoportal for you to work with them and make use of them courtesy of what the Africa has provided with the data cube. So in addition to that, what I'd mentioned is that we have ready-to-use applications, again, which you can use to address key questions without probably being too advanced in terms of being able to work with layers and so on. So the purpose of these applications, again, is just looking at what are the needs of the users, and also now just providing a way for different stakeholders or different people across Africa to make use of this data, answer a few questions, and be able to provide solutions to some of the challenges, again, across Africa. So one of the tools we have available is this executive application for what we are considering decision makers across Africa, where they could be able to just zoom to a particular place, again, just similar to what I'd shown previously. Then they can add their own data, apply a particular rendering option, then work with this data and so on. So for example, in this application, a user will be able to select a country. So in this case, if I selected Botswana, it should allow me to zoom to Botswana and start. So for the applications I'd mentioned, we had the executive application, and we also have the standard Explorer application. So for Explorer, you'll still have the capabilities that had been mentioned earlier on the other side, in terms of being able to just load the different layers and applying different rendering options on them and so on. So we have a number of layers that have been made available. Again, so the Sentinel-2 annual GeoMAD, Landsat, then we have the main Landsat views and Sentinel views layers from the original sources. And again, back to the Africa with croplands, extends water observation from space, and ALOS pulsar data. So once someone selects a particular layer, they'll be able to change the rendering option based on what's available. And this just, again, happens on the fly, where someone is able to look at this information and just be able to interact with the layer as it is. Another thing we have, or another capability, just depending on the layers you're working with, you have the ability to compare imagery for different periods and so on, whereby if I enable my slider here, then I'll be able to add 2 different layers and make comparisons between them over different times and so on. One of the things I was hoping to do is just do a comparison over Mount Kenya using the Sentinel-2 geomap. So I hope that will just finish loading as we continue to have this discussion, but that's one of the things that would be possible to do with a particular layer once it finishes loading. I think it's just a hitch for now on my machine. But other than that, again, within this application, it's possible to add your own data from Access Online. So we've made it possible, again, to link to your account on Africa Geoportal. And then you're able to just sign in and add different data sets based on what you'd like to achieve. So just looking at what I did previously with Bathi Swamp or Lake Sulunga, if I logged in here and then I was able to just bring in my data sets, I could again load the different villages and the households from OpenStreetMap buildings and be able to do the same kind of work as was indicated earlier. So we've just made it possible for you to be able to add data and make use of it. And finally, one of the things that we've also enabled is the ability to export this information for use onto other platforms and so on. So again, as someone who is a user of this application, it will be possible to export this to this or to portal, so to push it back to Africa Geoportal where you can manage your content. So you just specify where you need this to be stored and start making use of it there. Or you could export it in TIFF format or PNG format, so that for PNG or just JPEG standard image format, you can append it on a report or a document. Or if it's TIFF, if you have a desktop application that consumes TIFF or GeoTIFFs and so on, you'll be able to open it there and start making use of it on that platform. So I think with time, again, you could just be able to explore all of these capabilities. And one of the ways that we intend to do this on Friday is through the lesson that we make available, that will just allow you to start interacting with this application using the lesson as a guideline for this. Yeah. So I think with that, Ken, I'll just hand it over back to you.